Hey everyone, so it's been a while since I've done one of these, probably definitely over a year, maybe even 2 years, but I'm going to give you a little, well actually it's not very little, but it's an update as to just what's been going on in my personal life from basically right before the pandemic, and then I'm going to go all the way to the present day. So I'm going to encompass obviously current events in this thing, obviously what goes on in my personal life that goes without saying. So without further ado, I'm going to fill you in. So we're going to start with the 2020s, and we're going to start with the decade that is fairly recent memory to all of us. So 2020. I'm not going to do a month by month thing, just kind of significant events, if you will. So the virus, the COVID-19 it's kind of in the rearview mirror of some people. Like, we don't know what the threat of the thing is going to be. It's just emerging onto the world scene barely. Well, not barely, but it's really starting to anyway. So I don't ring in the new year with any like parties or any events. I just sleep the night away like any other night. And I have a date on Bumble. Nice girl. I go to her place, doesn't really go as planned, and a lot of that is just because her parents were basically there the whole time. I didn't go to her bedroom or anything. There certainly wasn't any intimacy at all. Like, if you want to do the baseball analogy, the game never really started. So I was very just SOL with that shit. But it was a good like experience overall. Then I went home and things went on as usual. That is until the pandemic. Then I had another date, and this one on Tinder, and it was pretty good. We made out and stuff like that. Then the day ended, and it was all good. We watched some Catfish on Hulu or something, and then cue the lockdowns. All of a sudden the world comes to a screeching halt. The toilet paper catastrophe is in full swing, and everything's locking down, and we don't know how long we're going to be locked down for. We don't know the severity of this virus that they keep talking about. I heard about it for the first time, I think, in like late February or late January or early February, something like that. It was like just news you really had to look for, so it wasn't exactly front page, I don't think, at the time yet. So anyway, that happens, and one thing that it did interrupt was I have a buddy who I went to the strip club every month or so with, and we make it rain and all that kind of stuff. So that didn't happen because we had that planned, and then the lockdowns happened, and yeah, so that didn't go as planned, unfortunately. When I went to work, I was wiping down everything. Just really, I didn't have a mask until about April, so I had to, I guess you would say, kind of rough it until I got one. Then I got some from work, and everything was good, at that point in time for me. And at work, my hours got changed. Not for the not for the worse, for the better. Well, not really. I'll explain. So before it was like, your 8 hour day, 4 day or 5 days a week, 40 hours total per week. But this time it was 10 hours for like 3 days and then 4 days, and it would alternate. So yeah, the big con was, oh, you get home super late, but you also had a very long weekend every week. But one thing that they started doing, because I don't know why, they're just trying to mess with us, is that they made us do like monthly mandatory overtime. So it's like, oh, we don't like how you're working like 3 days a week, and so we're gonna like make it so that you have to come in on one of your days off, and it can't be the one like following, like, say, like a Tuesday or Wednesday, or like the last day of whichever week it is. It has to be smack dab in the middle of your weekend, and I'm like, blow me, really? You're gonna do that to us? Yeah, they did that to us. So that sucked. And with the lockdown, I basically suspended all dating activity. I didn't want to meet with anyone, just taking personal precautions from, potentially giving the virus to someone else or them passing it on to me. So that didn't happen. And I was okay with that because I understood. And late May, lockdowns get lifted, and someone on Tinder reaches out to me for the first time in like 6 months or something, or maybe even longer. I think almost a year actually. And then, we have a couple of dates, but eventually shit kind of fizzles out. And it was the closest thing I had to a girlfriend. And that's probably one thing you're all wondering is, oh, does he have a girlfriend? No, I'm still single. I'll mention that again just for reference. But anyway, yeah, we go to the mall. We go to like just that's really the main place, just the mall, and then like my house and stuff like that. Nothing. It stopped, but I was like, it was worth. It was definitely worth connecting with someone, even if it was short lived. But anyway, in any case, and then right after that, so this is probably like the week after, then come the George Floyd protests and the unrest that comes around it. And what they did in my city, what they did in Chicago, is they raised the drawbridges. And basically they did that because the mayor wanted to restrict access to the city to make sure that no one else was like, wreaking havoc, setting fire to vehicles and destroying property and robbing and looting. So that was a precaution taken, but I commuted at the time I was still living in the suburbs, so I had to commute via Metro to work. So I have to cross the river to get to work. So when they lifted those things like this, I couldn't go to work. I couldn't go to work for a week straight because of that. So I was gypped out of a week's pay of work because of the unrest with George Floyd and restricting access to the city. So that pissed me off a lot. I think anyone would get pissed off by that. So weeks later, this would have been in June of that year, my grandmother passes so this would have been my mom's mom. She was 87, I think, 87, 88, something like that. And it wasn't sudden. It was sad, obviously, when it happened, but it wasn't sudden. We saw this years before, it was coming. We knew it was coming. And we just kind of accepted, well, this is this is basically fate. I mean, we can't, everyone has an expiration date, right? Like, nobody lives forever, nobody's immortal, everyone goes at some point. And this was just her time. So, that happened, and I get a couple more dates. This would have been like August, September, and they're pretty average, they're one-time things, but again, just, it's whatever. And I take my vacation in September. I can't go anywhere because COVID lockdowns, restrictions, the Europe thing that my dad and I were supposed to do, it didn't end up happening then. So I was stuck at home. I didn't want to travel, obviously, because again, COVID, there was no vaccine yet. So I was really taking it very easy and just not trying my hardest not to spread shit, right? So yeah, that happened, and get a little bit closer here. Okay, there we go. And at Christmas, we take COVID precautions because one of our family friends is immunocompromised. She has a respiratory thing, so we're distanced, we're in the mask, we have the door propped open a little bit, the window, to get some ventilation in, even though it's Christmas, Chicago, it's very cold, but it's for everyone's own good, because again, the vaccines were just coming out, but at the time only healthcare workers were getting them. So until then, yeah. So that was that. And now turns 2021. Nothing really happens in January. I mean, in my personal life, it's an average month, going to work, masking it up, whatnot. Then February comes along, and turns out at the time I'm living with my mom, right? So basically we're in quarantine, and our landlord tells us that she's selling our unit. So we weren't getting evicted or anything. It's just our lease was coming up, and she was eager to sell our unit. For whatever reason, if you're a landlord or you're a property expert, I'm sure you can fill me in on maybe why the hell the landlord was like, "I'm selling your place," and you have to get the fuck out. I'm sure you understand that. I certainly don't. So we had to do that, but the good thing was I was already planning on moving to the place I have now, and my mom was planning on retiring, and she moved states. She moved to South Carolina to retire. So anyway, I start the process to look for my own place in March. I get in contact with a leasing agent, awesome guy. I secure an initial rent deposit, if you will. I get a lease, runs a credit check, all that stuff. So it took about 2 months, I think, to, um, plus moving in and stuff like that and reserving an elevator. It took about 2 months to move into the place I have now. So I don't know if that's a normal thing. I don't know if that's average, moving into a new apartment as a renter. I don't know if 2 months is a long time or if it's a short time, but for me, it took me about 2 months. You can fill me in maybe how long it took you in the comments, but in any case, so during that time, as I'm looking for a place in March, I have another date. This one is from Hinge. I'm on 3 different ones. And she winds up coming over to not this place, but the one I used to live in that I make videos from. And I wind up getting laid. So that's number 2 of, I guess, not losing my virginity, but just having sex. So that's the second time in my entire life of having sex, and it was amazing. And even to this day, we still talk. She has a boyfriend now, but we still talk every now and then. So it wasn't necessarily a dine and dash sort of thing, but yeah, that's what happened there. And in April, I start my COVID vaccine regimen, so I get my first dose. So this is as I'm in the moving process. Obviously, I'm packing up and all that kind of stuff. And then once I move, about a week later is when I have my second dose. I get my second dose, so I'm fully vaccinated by May of 2021. And so in the summer, I settle into the apartment. You see behind me, obviously, where I'm at right now. And also my work goes back to the 8-hour schedule after a year of doing the 10-hour alternating 3-4 days. And of course I missed it, So, summer's pretty chill. I don't really do much that I can remember. And then September, I fly to Europe with my sister. She joins us for the French part of the trip. I go for Austria and Italy as well. And my dad, obviously, he organized the whole thing, so it was awesome. I owe everything to him, just amazing trip. Obviously, I made a video about that. You can check it out. So that happened in September, late September into early October of 2021. It was 3 weeks total. So that was my vacation last year. In November, now, I actually lose 2 people that I know. One of them is my grandpa, my papa, Italian, on my mom's side. So my mom's dad passed away in November of 2021. This was in the middle of the month, I believe, or no, I think it was earlier in the month, but we didn't have the funeral until the middle of the month. So he dies of natural causes. My grandma, who I just mentioned, Nana, she had I don't know if I mentioned that, she had very bad Alzheimer's. So it's one of those things where it's it's certainly not a sudden death. Maybe it is for some people, but with her it took years. But for my papa, for my grandpa, it was more natural causes. He fought in Korea. He had a Purple Heart, and you know, him and my grandma, I think, married in 54 or something like 1954. I could be wrong about that. I think that's what it was. So that was obviously right after the war. And he was a radar watcher. You know, him and another guy were watching the radar as it got bombed. So, you know, he got obviously an injury from that, hence his Purple Heart. And another person I know dies. A friend in high school I had died of coronavirus. He died of COVID. I don't know if he was vaccinated. I just know from, you know, I was in contact with his brother, his half brother, who broke the news, you know, along with family of his, that COVID took his life. He was in the ICU for I think 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, and unfortunately he clocked out. It saddened me. I cried over it. It was sudden for it was a lot for me to handle because he was a good friend of mine from high school, and just, you know, knowing that COVID actually took someone you know personally, and like it hits you, you know. You probably know people who have died from it, you know, whoever you are watching, because I know my aunt. So this is my mom's brother's husband, or my mom's brother's wife. Her mom died of COVID as well. She lives in Wisconsin. Um, so technically, I know two people who have died from it, and so that was that. It was quite sad. You know, this happened. I got the news right before Thanksgiving, so it was just, yeah, it was sudden. And then New Year's. So I have a date off of Tinder for New Year's. You know, we go bar hopping and all that kind of stuff. But she turned out to be trans. She didn't disclose the information, so I'm just like, I just let it go as usual. I was willing to put it past me for the night, but I'm just like, yeah, I can't just, again, just transgender women, just like, again, I have nothing against them personally. I just don't want to be dating them. It's just, it's not, it doesn't quite get the juices flowing, you know what I mean? So I had to cut it loose with that person after like a couple of days later. But yeah, that was that. Again, bar hopping and all that kind of stuff. You know, we were awake and like Happy New Year and all that kind of stuff happened. Um, so that's 2021. I got my notes here. I'm gonna flip the page. It's definitely one of my longer videos, as you can see. Okay, so 2022 now. So again, you know, we all know what I did on New Year's, and I have another date on Tinder. This was like in the tail end of January, and it was also just very on the spot. So I think I was watching a movie at the time, and she hits me up with like, "Hey, what are you doing?" It's like, "Hey, I'm just chilling." It's like, you know, staying warm because it was very cold that night, as it usually is in Chicago in January. And she's like, "Oh, do you want to come keep me warm?" She gives me her address, and right away I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting laid a third time." And sure enough, that's what ended up happening. That's what ended up happening. You know, I slept with her. Obviously, I spent the night, so literally slept with her, and, you know, expressionally slept with her, like, you know. So that, and that was quite literally a one night stand. So that was my third time getting laid. This was late January of this year. So, and then in March, kind of March, April, I start exploring Ball and Bankrupt style. Well, not Ball and Bankrupt style. I don't carry like a Sony FDRX 3000 with me, like in front of me, like Soviet mosaics and like babushkas. You know, I don't do that. As you know, I'm a big fan of the guy, but I just like go out and just kind of like ride the different like metro, or not metro, the different L lines, just to feel them out and whatnot. And it's fun. It's fun. I do that. And, you know, I also just go to places just like the Pedway and stuff like that, and just Riverwalk, and just places in the city that, in the Loop. I don't go to the South Side. No way. Not the Southwest. No. I don't do that because, you know, this city can get quite dangerous in certain parts. So I do that. I get out. just have a look around, have a walk in and around my neighborhood and also the loop. And that goes on basically for the remaining, like, spring and summer of this year. And then I have another date, and this is in, I believe, June or July. I forget when exactly. I think it's July. And we have a couple of drinks and, good conversation. And then, I walk her home, kiss her goodnight. We don't have sex or anything, but it was just, nothing more than a kiss, really. So that happened, and obviously, or actually, no, that happened in August, my bad. And then July, obviously, if you watch my channel, I caught COVID. I tested positive. I know who gave it to me. It's not a mystery. I know, like, when I got it July 7th. I was dining with someone. It wasn't a date or anything. I was dining with someone in my family, and lo and behold, 5 days later, sore throat, take a test, 2 lines, it's positive, I have COVID. So that lasts for about a week. I go check out my videos on those if you're interested. I'm not going to go into it here because it's already been mentioned. And so that's that. And then come September, I take my first ever solo trip. This is my yearly 3-week vacation. I fly to Calgary in Canada. I go to a hostel. I stay at a hostel, rather. And from there, I meet a lot of interesting people, a lot of people from the UK, Germany, Belgium, Australia, also someone who actually lives in the province of Alberta who works up in the oil fields. So terrific people. We all go out drinking that one night of the 2 videos I think I previously uploaded. So that's from that. I walk around the city, have a good time, buy some souvenirs, walk along the river and stuff like that. If you live in Calgary, I'm sure you know where I'm talking about. Princess Island, the mall you have there is actually very nice. So it was an all-around great time. And then I fly back. I visit my mom in South Carolina about a week later. And before that happens, I actually get a bacterial infection in my throat because I have an on and off sore throat and a dry cough. I go to the doctor about it, and they test me for strep. It's negative, and they basically say, oh, it's probably just a bacterial infection. So I'm given antibiotics. I take them. It's like a 5-day regimen, 5 pills. I take them. I eventually get better, and here we are today. So that's basically what's been going on in my life the past 2.5 years, really, since COVID began, a little bit before that. But yeah, those are really the big things that have happened to me. So, do with that what you will, but that's just a general life update. I don't know when I'm going to do another one of these, but yeah, that's what's been going on with me since early 2020. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.